Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Next Level Real Talk Podcast, where we have conversations on the journey of personal transformation and the pursuit of lasting peace and happiness with Sheldon and David. Hi. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Next Level Real Talk Podcast. So, this will be our third episode after the one where Dave got to introduce himself and I got to introduce myself. And here we are. Um, and in
Welcome back.
the
Glad you're
Yeah,
back.
welcome back. Welcome back to those who are listening in or watching or whatever. And in fairness, and in um, when Dave and I, when you and I were first talking about doing this thing, one of the things we talked about was being uh, super real, which is why we called it Real Talk, right?
Yep,
And
totally. Hmm.
super authentic and super true to, just sort of our journey and our story and stuff like that, and how we are. And so I thought, in honoring that intention of what we were doing, that we also should be real about whatever might come up for us during this whole process, right? And so I had a few things that sort of came up for me in my last podcast, our last podcast, which is one, it was a
Hmm.
story of my journey, right? And so I just wanted to share um, what sort of came up for me a little bit. And I had what Brene Brown would be like the vulnerability hangover, right? Where when you share something about yourself, and then you're like freaking out afterwards. You're like, oh shit,
People
did
can
I?
listen to me. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, did I share too much and all that kind of stuff? And then I also have told you before that I can get hooked up into, like, when I used to post videos before, like, how many people watched it? Oh my God. And I started tripping out because, not very many people were watching the podcast that I had compared to the one that you
Hmm.
had. And my brain started going, my ego brain started flipping out about all that kind of stuff. Right. But also about, oh my God, it's kind of funny the way the ego works, right? Because
Hmm.
part of me was freaking out. Did I share too much? Did I get too spiritual, whatever, too
Yeah.
deep?
We
Was
all
that
get
too
there.
much? Was I freaking out about that? And if
Hmm.
and if that was the real fear, then I would be glad nobody watched, right? Right? Because it'd be
Yeah.
fair. But then on the backside of that, the ego's also hitting you both ways. Like, well, nobody watched the thing. What the heck? So
Yeah.
you're afraid you shared too much, and you're afraid that nobody watched it. But you want everybody to watch it, but you don't. Anyway.
So you're
So
both. You're bipolar at that moment.
yes,
You know.
exactly,
So you can't have both.
exactly, yes. And the ego can always hit you. It can hit you on the front
Yeah.
side, and it can hit you on the back
Yeah.
side, right?
And by the way, we've all been there. Okay, so
Yeah,
go. Keep going.
right,
Just
right.
hey,
Um,
come clean.
yeah, so that's just part of
Yeah. But tell them what your fears were. I mean, kind of more.
you know, I think that part of it comes down to um, growing up, always wanting to fit in,
Hmm.
and always wanting to be liked and all that kind of stuff. And I think that also, some of the, being an Asian in the, not very many Asians running around, that was part of my whole thing, was trying to fit in. And so even as an adult, sometimes I think, when we talk about being authentic and what does that mean to be authentic,
Yeah.
right? Truly who you are. Um, and in some of the spiritual texts, they talk about returning to original wholeness, like being an integrated whole being. And that's part of what healing is, right?
So real quick, I'm gonna kind of, I might steer you in a different direction, but we're gonna get there. So as you're doing that, I mean, yeah, I think as you're talking about your fears being like, am I helping anybody? Am I doing this? What am I doing? But us being authentic, and those that have listened before, this is not scripted whatsoever. We're just talking. We have ideas that we want to talk about, but there's not any script whatsoever. Um, but I know, as you and I were talking earlier, one of your fears is like, are people watching me? Are people not watching me? And it's like, but that's not what we want to do. But understand we're human and we still feel that way. Because
Yeah.
he's vulnerable. He told us that. Um, but that's not what we're here for. We're here to touch lives. We don't know how we're touching lives. But
Yeah.
that's one thing I think we can talk about is about
Yes.
we look at numbers. We want to crunch this. We want to do that. We want to get here. Did I reach the right number of people? No, okay, back up, breathe. Did I accomplish what I needed to do?
Yeah.
And that might be just, I don't know how many lives I've touched. We don't know
Yeah.
yet. you
Yeah.
know.
And
So,
our intention to do that, right, was by just being truly authentic
yep.
and just being us and just talking,
Hmm.
right? And that hopefully in doing that, some people might be able to relate,
Yeah.
whether that's
And
one
understand
person or
you're not alone
yeah,
in any of this.
right.
So,
So I think that, thank you. But yes, so
yeah.
that so that's part of what this was. And then, that's definitely something that came up. And I do think that sometimes I get into teacher mode. Oh, you should think like this, or you should do this. And you know what I mean? I get a little preachy about certain things, about how I look at things and my beliefs and stuff like that. Which I'm sure will happen during these things because it's just what happens. I just,
Hmm.
oh, this is
Yep.
how it all works. Um, but I've also always modified or couched how I would say things based on who I was talking to.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So, like, if I was
Yeah.
talking to somebody who wasn't a Christian, I could talk about with Buddhist language and Taoist language and Hindu language, and I could talk about spiritual things in different language, different ways, right? And versus what Jesus said, or Christian language or whatever, right? um and then when you're doing this, it's like you don't get to do that
Mm-mm.
because there's nobody else to whoever's listening to is listening to it, and you have to sort of just say what's truly in your own heart about how you look at things for yourself.
And I think that's what we want to do
Hmm.
because it doesn't matter. I mean, I can speak my Christianity and talk about God, talk about Jesus, which I will eventually down the line. There's a lot that I'm involved with that, but that hopefully doesn't scare anybody off because that's just who I am. It's like if you're Buddhist, if you're Catholic, if you're, whatever you are, you can still lean into what I'm talking about, and I can lean into
Yeah.
what you're talking about, and just have an understanding of, oh, okay,
Yes.
because we have a higher power. We
Yeah.
all have a higher power somewhere,
Yeah.
and so that's where we're coming from
Yeah. And
at times. So
yes, but
now,
I think
good.
sharing that kind of authentically is a vulnerability
Oh,
on a
totally.
level that is, as much as I've been out there in some ways, this feels new to me. So it definitely had that vulnerability hangover thing.
Hmm. Yeah, totally.
And and even, Sherry, one of our people who listened, and I won't put out her last name, but she's somebody we both know from high school. And she said, I feel like I'm listening to Sheldon and Dave, talk about themselves or whatever, their history. And she said she could hear the anxiety in my voice. And I started talking faster when I was telling some
Oh,
parts of
really?
my story.
Hmm.
And Jacqueline said the same thing. She's like, you're changing the pace of your, you're like, no, 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 and it's the
Yeah,
stuff that gets,
I can tell too. Well, I've known you forever,
yeah,
but
yeah.
there's certain things we talked about, how
Yeah.
you talk and what you say. It's
He
like
said I
that. I
started
know
swearing a
he's
lot.
getting in. Yeah, because and I'll tell you to the audience, I didn't say anything to him because I know he's getting into it. That's where he's coming from because that was
Yeah.
such a traumatic thing for him, and for him to be talking about it, he gets into it, which is okay. I can't
Yeah.
argue that.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know if you want to talk about it, but as we were going to talk about, tell them what we're going to talk about from last into this, but we want to kind of change our ways of
Yeah,
just today.
so I think at the end of the last episode, where was my sharing about my life, we were talking about, oh, we are going to do the first steps to this journey of personal transformation kind of thing, and talk about sort of um, what that process looks like or something like that. But rather than get all teachy or whatever and just talking about this, I wanted to obviously start by sharing about what was coming up for me, just to keep it real. But
Yeah.
we were also, some stuff came up. Jacqueline and I were talking about. Um, we had also shared about how you never know what
Hmm.
little things you do, whether it's a kind word, whether it's a card or a note or an email or just being there for somebody. You never know what those little things that you do and how the effect that they can have on somebody. And so a story just came in my mind, that when Jacqueline and I were talking, I wanted to share it. It was like, it has to do with my mom. So when my mom broke her back, she had osteoporosis, or the backbone, the vertebrae were just thinning, and she was literally just getting on and off a bus and walking around all day doing some Christmas shopping, and she literally fractured her back in like 5 places. and so painful. She couldn't get really sit up, and at one point, and it started about a 3.5 year process of gradual time, which eventually she died. But in the early stages of that, she could still sit up and have dinner, and she was coherent, could talk and have conversations and stuff like that. And me being the teacher boy, always trying to tell lessons, share lessons. You know that this always, So I was telling her about a book I had read, which I think it was called "I Come as a Brother." But there's this woman, I can't remember her name, and she'd written several books of channel teachings. These beings called a Bartholomew. They called themselves Bartholomew, and they were
Hmm.
these light beings, and they were sharing teachings, and they were beautiful teachings about love and all this stuff. And one of the teachings was talking about how only love is real, which is something that the Course in Miracles says, that the primal force, the thing of the universe, what God is love, unconditional love, right? And so there's this energy that permeates everything, and it's love, and everything else isn't actually real, meaning all the other stuff that you see, it's transient, it's there, it looks like it's real, but it's not. The thing that's underneath everything is this energy of love. No matter how horrific the scene is, the thing that underlays it all is love, right? And so I was trying to teach my mom, you know, and she's sitting there, can barely sit upright or whatever. And I was just like, "Hey, mom, so by the way, I was reading this book, and I was sharing her this story about this teachings of Bartholomew." And she just goes to me, she goes, "Oh, I know that." And I'm like, "Oh, how did you know that?" She goes, "Well, I had a dream the other day." I'm like, "Really? What was that?" And she goes, "It was super vivid. I had this dream, and I got to see every single person that I touched in my entire life." She said, whether it was a card I wrote, whether it was a gift I bought them, whether it was a simple word or phrase I said to them or a kind word, she goes, I saw every single person that I touched and the magnitude of what I did and the
Wow.
impact it had on their lives. And I got to see it radiate out. In other words, I got to see that love echo throughout all of that person's lives. She goes, I saw the whole thing for every person in my entire life. And she goes, I used to think that I had to do something big, something dramatic, something special, extravagant in order to have meaning in my life. And she goes, and I
Hmm.
realized that I don't, that my life had meaning exactly the way it was. So she was like, I'm at peace. I'm good. I'm ready to go. I,
Wow.
I already saw it. I already had my life review, if you will,
Hmm.
it was pretty huge. So, and that kind of popped in my head because we had talked at the end of our last episode. We were saying, hey, just don't ever underestimate the power of a kind word. We just sort of
Yep.
said it like that. But
Hmm.
I thought that this story was worth sort of amplifying that. Um, and, you've had things, right, as
Yeah.
well, where,
The talking about your mom, because I know the whole experience that I was going through, but your mom, she did those knowing she did little things, but not saying, "Okay, I'm gonna do this to make this person happy. I'm just gonna do this." She just did things all
yep.
the time. She did things for me. I mean, she touched my life just to let me hang out with her, and just no one's there, and she's making me breakfast or dinner or lunch or whatever, and it's just her and I. And but she, she it wasn't like, okay, I'm going out to do an act to try and change someone's life. Sometimes we do things we don't even know what we're doing. We're just living our life because of who we are. And
100%.
if you're that, I don't want to be negative to anybody, but if you're that angry, mean, bully person, yeah, you're affecting people in a wrong way. But you're not going to get that positive in your life if you're trying to find peace, trying to find understanding, and trying to get that journey. If you're slowly working through that, you're gonna touch lives no matter
Hmm.
what. One in my journey, I'll add two quick stories real quick. One, my journey is my daughter, who is adopted. She's not my blood daughter, and I love her to death, Ashley. And so when I married her mother, she was 7. I think she was 7, and within I'll show you a picture down the road. There's a picture of her and I watching TV. We're asleep. We fell asleep. It was 2 months after I met her mom. We bonded that closely, and me, I'm like, I don't know. I've never had kids. I've never had a kid, so I don't know. But going through the process is just being me and being the person who I am. Um, I down the road when she says, and I say this, her biological father had passed away, and we had told her, and we're kind of like, "Well, you okay?" Because she wasn't really reacting to anything, and she goes, "Why? He's my dad." I mean, that's whoa. I mean, whew, mm, brings tears to my eyes now.
Whew,
But to have that said of
beautiful.
me, not yes, I know I'm her dad because I'm her stepdad, but no, I'm her father. And I'd always told I always told my wife, my ex-wife now, I always told her, I don't, she always calls me David, 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 David. I just want to hear dad. I want to hear that dad thing. I'm like, I want to be a dad. But she goes, "You don't hear it, but she does." I go, "What?" She goes, "Yeah, when she's at school, she worked where her grandma worked. I mean, she went to school where her grandma worked." And she goes, "Yeah." And she goes, her grandma always said that, yeah. She always says, "My dad, my dad, my dad, my dad." And talking about me. She goes, when she talks to all of her friends, it's your dad, but she knows you as David because we all called you David. And so it's funny. She still calls me that now and then. She calls me dad, but she'll say David, but it's like, it's endearing because
Yeah,
but so, like, I didn't know I was touching her that much. I
yeah,
mean, obviously, we're very close today, and I got 2 wonderful grandkids out of it. So that's one thing where you don't realize what you're doing, and obviously being
yeah,
a parent's different.
yeah,
But this one is a totally different scenario where, you really don't know what you're doing. Um, Impacting, I should say. So, North High School, I started the swim team in '96, and 22 years later, I retired from teaching and from coaching. And so during that time, yeah, I was the coach. I was the one. And so yes, I touched lives. Yes, I knew I was doing this because I was the man. Oh yeah, I was North High School. I retired, and I just wanted to be done. I wanted to be an assistant coach, and all of a sudden, I become um, a coach at Highland High School. I'm like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Like, I really not don't think I'm that good of a coach. Again, that's where the mind goes. 4-time coach of the year. Don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, I do. So I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing here. What are we doing? I prayed about it. I go, Lord,
the ego, fear-based mind, right?
right
Fear,
there.
insecurity,
Hmm.
all that.
Totally. Because I
22
was never a
years,
swimmer.
coach of the year
Never a
4
swimmer in high
times, you
school.
still have that. You still have that. Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy?
Played football, ran track in high school. Never swam
Yeah,
competitively a day in my life.
yeah.
So I don't, but I learned it and obviously
Could
was
coach it.
knowledgeable now. Yeah. And so come to Highland, I'm like, what am I doing? So the first year was kind of half and half. There was a coach there and I was helping her, and then they wound up letting her go and they made me the head coach. I'm like, you want me to what? I'm like, oh man, I don't want to do this. And so there was a girl on the team. I knew her mother, and of course, they batted their eyes. Well, she's on the team. I won't mention names, but she knows who she is if she's listening. And I was like, "Oh man, don't do that," because I didn't want her to have a bad 2 years with new coaches. And so, okay, I jumped in. So I did it, and so I was talking to him. I did it for 2 years. I told
Because
the
continuity of coaching is important for a kid's
huge,
career. So that's what they
huge,
were saying. They didn't want you to leave and screw her career up because she'd have to get
exactly.
some new coach and get used to them, and she doesn't know who they are,
Hmm.
blah, blah, blah. So
Yep,
that's a heavy
and
guilt trip, dude.
oh, totally. Oh, they laid it on hard. I'm like, I can't just leave because I know that process is like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
then the sophomore, juniors, and seniors are going to have a bad ending
yeah,
career, because it takes 2 to 3 years to figure it all out.
yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm gonna stick this out. And in that half year, they got to know me somewhat. It was still a push because now I was the head coach and I was changing things, and so there was a pushback, heavy pushback, and by the kids because it's
Yeah,
just I'm now holding them on to line. Hey, you got to do
yep,
this. We're doing this. We're doing this.
yep, yep.
Um, and I came in. I go, guys, I don't know what's happening. I go, this is a whole. I did not plan this. God has a plan somewhere. I don't know what is going on here, but we're gonna get through. Whatever God's plan is, we'll take care of it. We'll take care of it. We'll get through it. So the first year was a little tough because they pushed back. Nick, you know who you are. So he just pushed back hard. And he's uh, I talk to him all the time now. He's a good kid. I like the kid, and so it's kind of funny how that happened. So the second year was COVID,
Some of the
and
ones
I'm
that
like,
push back the hardest become the closest, right?
yep. And
Some of the ones that,
him and his dad were there when I moved from my condo to the house, and so they were there to help. I was like, wow, that was pretty cool. So Nick, love your brother, um, and so that second year was COVID. Okay, and and in that COVID year, it, it what do you do? You're swimming. And
Right.
I had, oh gosh, I have 75, 80 kids, maybe more,
I remember you
80 to
talking about that. You had
85.
a huge team, right?
Huge team. And you had to split them up in a certain way. You can't have six in a lane because they're all, you don't wear a mask when you swim. You know,
Right.
kind of hard. So I'm like, how do we do this? So we had a plan, and I got them all together. I said, guys, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what we're gonna do. Again, like I told you before, God's in control of this. I don't know what his plan is in this whole thing. It's a hot mess already. I go, we're gonna figure it out. So I got my 12 seniors together. Guys, I don't know what to do. I really don't. I go, but I'm not gonna lie to you. I've been praying about it, and this is what I've been told. And I said, you're all captains. Like, oh, everybody gets a ribbon. I said, no, that's not what it is. I said, yes, everybody does get a ribbon because you're all captain. But here's what I need. We're doing groups. So each captain had 5 kids or whatever kids, however many kids they had. I go, because we have 3 different practices going on. Because I had to split it up. I could only have so many kids in the pool at a time.
Yeah.
And I go, so I'm going to meet with you 12. Here's the plan. Boom. You go out to your little groupies, talk to them. Here's the goal setting. Here's this, here's this, here's this. Because I couldn't have one meeting with all of them and say, here, let's set goals.
Yeah.
Hey, here's the plan for the week. Hey, here's what we're doing for this
You're trying to
invite.
do the whole social distancing thing
Yeah.
in the
And
middle of
so
the whole thing.
so I was the CEO, and I
Yeah.
had all my little, assistant, let's say assistant superintendents, and they were talking to all the teachers or whatever you want to call it. That's how it kind of trickled down. And that was the most awesome thing that ever happened because it worked. But in the whole reason I want to talk about this, the whole process, I was talking about God in my life. And I don't know what, guys, I'm nervous. I was being vulnerable. I don't know. God has a plan for what we're going to do here. It's going to work. I don't know what it is. It's going to work. And one of the parents who was my official, and she was there the first year I was there, and then this is the second year when I was head coach, then as head coach. Um, she's sitting there and she goes, Smitty, I got to tell you something. I go, what? She goes, those parents appreciate you so much. I said, oh, thank you. She goes, no, 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 not for coaching our kids, but just the way you talk about God. I'm like, wait, I'm not allowed to talk about God. I'm talking about God. I mean, I'm not talking about God. I'm not preaching to him. I can't do that in a public
You
school.
getting in trouble? You trying to get me in trouble?
Yeah. And she goes, no, 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 no. She goes, no, you're not. No, not that you're preaching to him. She goes, it's just the way you talk about God. She goes, you just naturally talk about it because you've talked about how you don't know the plan, but God has a plan. God is there. But you just naturally talk about God. And they're like, they come home and say, coach is talking about God and how he has God in his life. It's so cool. And she goes, the mom goes, of course, we talk to them about that, having God in their life, going through this. God's there to help you. But they don't listen to us. All of a sudden, they're listening to you because you're just talking about nonchalantly talking about how God's in your life and he's helping you. That's where you're getting your knowledge from, your power from, your strength from. And I go, oh, wow. So
That's
that was a huge thing in my life that I realized, like, wow, something I don't even realize that I'm doing. I'm just living my life
yeah.
and doing who I am. And it changed several, like four different classes. So I was there for
Tons. Yeah.
3, yeah. So however many classes you want to call it,
Yeah.
but and then I'll say the one, Sadie. Sadie was the one that they kind of got me into swimming to that team is because of Sadie, and and with that and her mom and I are still good, or have always been friends. But Sadie and I stay in contact a lot, so it's really cool. I watch her swim meets. I got to go see that. So it's those things like that you just don't know what you're doing, and in my 2 years at Xavier, 3 years now at Xavier, I mean, it's the pinnacle of my career, but it's amazing how those kids still talk to me and are still like interested in how I'm doing, how I go watch their meets at, in colleges and stuff. And so you really don't know. And I look back on my life and I realize, wow, what that person did, what that person did, what that person did. I mean, I can name them all in my. I mean, you got Mr. Lyons, a principal, Eric Ledoux, okay, student council advisor, now friend, Lou Kirby, the one who always took me and did everything. Just people like that, that were there, that were around as adults. You're going like, wow, they made a difference, and I'm sure they weren't trying to make a difference, but we all try to make a difference. But it's amazing. So,
Yeah.
so from my perspective, telling people out there, you may be going through a hard time. Okay, you may be thinking like, "Gosh, I just don't," maybe feeling depressive. Maybe in depression, going, "I'm just not good. I don't know about this or something." You have to understand that somewhere you have touched someone's life, and you probably they reached out to you and you helped them. That means it's okay. Reach out. It's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
Okay, it's because we're not alone. Understand that, people. We're not alone. And so as we go through that, we need to realize that no matter what we're doing, we're touching lives.
Mhm.
And so if you are the bully or the mean person, yes, you're touching life in a different way. But hopefully you're looking at it as you're going through something. You're not trying to get that little notch on your, my little check mark. Okay, I did that. No, you're just doing a natural life and just going through. And that's where that peace and that happiness and that journey has come for me, because I was
Mhm.
in some angry places, in some always angry, upset. But it's like, whoa, dude, you just it's okay.
Mhm.
Life is tough. I don't lie to you. Life sucks. But I was trying to make life perfect and it ain't. And so I gotta have to go back and go, this is gonna happen to me, but I can still be that person that I am inside me.
Mhm.
So we need to hopefully we can find that peace and that understanding, and that journey, we can give that peace back to others.
Yeah.
So
The course calls that the echo, the radiance of that. You could talk about it in terms of light, is that your light radiates, but then other people's light radiates out. And we don't know how far that reaches. We don't know when you drop that pebble in that pond how far that wave goes out and affects other people. And
yes.
do you, and like you were saying, do you want to affect them positively or negatively?
Yep.
You want to affect people with a smile or with a punch? You know what I mean? It's just like,
Yeah.
and I've done, uh, both.
Yeah.
so,
I think we
so,
all have. I didn't punch
you know,
anybody, never hit anybody, by the way. Uh, I did a mental punch. There we go. So, but like with your mom, so people understand his mom. She wasn't the out in public, out in nature, out doing everything for everybody. The what do you call it? The high school helicopter mom doing all that stuff. She was always home. She was always doing stuff. I mean, from my perspective as a kid,
Mhm.
so it wasn't like, and I'll compare them. My mom doing Pop Warner. She's out there as a teacher. She's out there doing
Yeah,
clubs. She's out there doing just. She was
involved.
Miss Popular. She's
Yeah.
everything. Your mom was more. I won't say inverted because she wasn't really inverted because she was very outgoing. I loved it. But you know what I'm saying, Sheldon. But
Mhm.
so I want people to understand that it wasn't like, oh, I touched all these lives. Well, yeah, you probably should have because you did all this. Well, no, she was never the one to go out in public and do all that stuff.
Yeah.
But she would do it for other people when she could, when she did.
Yeah.
It impacted people.
Yep.
So, and that's nothing negative about your mom. You know that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Um, Gee, mini crickets. So, in your saying that, it's just another story about my mom popped in. Should I share it?
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
All right. So,
This is what we're,
so
we're hey, next level real talk. Let's just talk and just, you
and
know,
it's not scripted. So, when I was doing crack, um,
hmm
I had gotten fired from a job, so I was on unemployment. I got laid off. I was on unemployment, so I was able to survive on the unemployment checks. And so there was this period of time where I wasn't working because I was functional and working through most of. There's this, and that's like 6 months unemployment where I would get up at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon because I'd been sleeping all night, I'd been partying all night. Get up like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, take a shower, and I would go into San Francisco and I would hang out with my mom. Get there like 6 o'clock, and she'd be cooking dinner, and I would talk to her or whatever, and she'd make me dinner. And I would use the money because the way I thought about it was the $20 that I would have spent on dinner, I can now spend on drugs, right? So
hmm
I would go to
yeah.
her house and I would eat dinner and I would pig out because that would be the only meal I was eating all day, right? And then I was in San Francisco and I'd swing up to the Tenderloin and I would go up there and I would buy some crack and I would go down to my place and I would, do crack by myself all night long till like 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. I'd fall asleep. I'd wake up at 2 in the afternoon, and I would do this thing. So I had this routine going for for a while, and I always thought that my mom didn't know. There's no friggin' way my mom knew. No way. And I remember when I was telling Jacqueline this. I think it was before we were married. She's like, she met my mom. She got to meet mom a couple bunch of times. She's like, your mom's smart. Your mom's got cop on. There's no way your mom didn't know. There's no way your mom didn't. I'm like, I'm telling you, man, she never knew. She had no clue whatsoever. She just didn't know. I would go over there and I would hang out and I was all good because I'd just woken up and I'd shower and I was all clean. Everything was fine. I was totally coherent. I wasn't all messed up. She's like, there's no way your mom didn't know. Jacqueline's telling me. So in that period when she broke her back, and when she was still good at the beginning, we would go over there. We were going over
Hmm.
there all the time, having dinner with her. And one night, out of the blue, I don't even think we were on the subject. Out of the blue, she just goes, "Yeah, it's like that time when you were coming over here all the time, doing all your drugs." She goes,
She
she
said,
just looks, she just
"Go,
straight up
mom.
look.
Mom, know
She just look.
everything."
She just goes, "It's like that time when you were coming over here doing all those drugs." And she goes, "I knew." Because she goes, "I know how you are. That if I tried to give you a hard time, if I tried to lay into you, if I tried to get all mother on you and say you got to," she goes, "you just would never show up again." She goes,
Which
"So I
would have
knew
happened.
the only thing I could do was put as much love as I could into that food and
Mm,
feed you the most nutritious, loving food I could possibly
I
make
love your
for you."
mom.
And she goes, "And that's what I did." She goes, "I would," so it became her mission every day to go
Mm,
shopping, to get this food, whatever, to make me the best meal she could
wow.
possibly make me. And she never said a frickin' word for
Wow.
months. I did this. And she said, and she later on, of course, told me that a couple times she'd turn around and I would be passed out and sleeping at the dinner
And
table.
I gotta tell you, people, from my perspective, her food was awesome. I'd go over there
Yes.
and she'd be making California rolls and stuff. She'd make me eat right. She'd make me eat. So I had to eat because I'm Mama Joe. Come on, man, I have to eat. And
She could
but
cook, no doubt.
yeah, she cooked and she gave love through that because it was always it wasn't like, okay, I remember Sheldon's mom. That's kind of weird. No, but she was a mom. She was a mom to me, and with that love that she cooked, I'm telling you, it was awesome.
But
And go ahead.
so I always thought from that story, like, can you imagine being a parent and seeing your kid going down this path
Mm,
of addiction and whatever? They're like going down the
hmm.
drain. And you've kind of having the wisdom to know, I really, if I try to intervene on this guy, he's just going to bolt on me.
Yeah,
So she did nothing but send love through food
but love you. Hmm.
every day
Yeah.
and just trusted because she also had a deep trust and a faith and a trust in me. Remember, I was saying that prayer of Saint Francis, she would write those little cards and she would send me little cards. She would send
Hmm.
those little, 3x5 cards with a poem or a prayer or whatever. So she was doing her little things, but she never directly confronted me and said,
She
"You
didn't
got to
throw the mom
stop."
card out. She didn't throw a mom card
She
in.
never did that. And I was just like,
No.
damn, that talk about unconditional love, a demonstration of pure unconditional love. Like, I'm just going to love you. I'm going to let you do whatever the hell you need to do.
Yep.
And I'm going to trust. I'm going to have faith. I'm going to have trust. And I'm going to let you run. And I'm going to send you as much love as I can through my food and through my little things and whatever. But I'm not going to harp on you. I'm not going to demand. I'm not going to do an
Yeah.
intervention. I'm not going to do any of that shit. I'm just going to let you roll out because I know and I trust. I was just like, when I think about that, it's just like, mind boggling to me from a parent perspective
Hmm.
that you could do that. Like, there's a certain, almost like a mastery. You know what I mean? I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, man, that is
Because as a
badass.
parent, you want to change it and fix it now.
Yes,
My
you're
kid's
gonna
going down the
grab
wrong
them.
hole.
Yes, I'm gonna
Yeah.
grab them, lock them in a room, and I'm not gonna let them go out till
Yeah.
they're like clean. You know what I mean, or whatever, that kind of
Yeah.
thing, right? She
Exactly.
did the exact total opposite, and
Yeah.
it all
That's
worked out.
awesome.
But she just had that kind of trust and faith, and
Hmm.
um, in me and in her higher power, her relationship with God. And she just, she always used to say, "It doesn't matter what you do. You don't have to go to church. You don't have to do it." She goes, "You don't need to do any of that stuff." She's like, "I got a direct,
I got the I got the
I got,
direct.
I got the direct connection. I don't need it. I don't need anything." It's just like, you don't
Yeah.
need to do that. So,
The I do. So I'm gonna go back to my story real quick. Tell you
yeah,
the good part of the ending of all is good ending.
well, go ahead.
Yeah. So with Ashley, um, all we both are. She's got some of my traits. Poor kid. She's not my blood, but she wound up with some of my traits. So I don't know how that happened, but it's called nature, I guess. Nurture. There you go, nurture.
Yeah.
Um, and so we're both early risers, and we're driving to school at the same time, pretty much. And so we call each other. She calls me every morning, and we talk on the way to work. I get to school. I sit in my truck. She gets to school, and she says, "Okay, I'm at school. Okay, great. Have a great day. Have a great day." So we have that conversation, and I'll tell you, it's really hard for me when we don't have that call, because I'm so used to it. But it's good to hear her voice, good to talk to her, just kind of just talk about whatever. Um, and so it's good, and we have some deep conversations. Sometimes it's kind of those, sometimes it's political, sometimes it's just ethical, sometimes we're this is what's going on. I read this today. What do you think? Oh boy, we went big.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's
Yeah.
just laughing and joking about her kids, my grandkids, and so that's kind of a great thing, that me not knowing what this would be. Gosh, she's 31 now. Sorry, Ashley. She's 31. So that's, I mean, 7 to 31, 24 years that I've
Yeah.
known this kid,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and on that Highland thing, I'm gonna call this one, I call him that on this one. So Nick, the kid that I said was the problem. So I yelled and got him in the first meet ever, got him in the office and said, "You," I laid into him. I said, "You're out. You're not swimming this meet." Called his parents and said, "I will not have that on my deck. I will not have disrespect like that." They go, "Okay, thank you. You're right." And so he was the problem child. Well, Sadie, the one that I coached the team, because everybody wanted me to, blink their eyes at, please help her. Um, and so they wound up dating. And I called Sadie's mom in because she was our bookkeeper. And I go, I'm not into this. I go, Sadie's like my daughter. I ain't going for this. I don't want her dating him. I really don't want her anywhere near this guy. So then the next year, okay, but I will tell you, it was so awesome because they're still dating to this day. And I took them aside one day and I said, "Guys, I want to tell you something." I go, "Thank you." They're like, "What?" You know, I go, "You don't display any affection on this deck in the water. You are not all over each other." Because I told him, I said, "I know you're dating. This will not happen." And they never, I mean, they may have held hands maybe, but they were never showing affection
Kept
at
it
the pool at
professional.
practice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kept it very professional. And to this day they're still dating. I see them. When Sadie's in town, Nick, Sadie and I'll go out and have a bite to eat. And so you don't know, in that one moment where I was yelling at Nick, and getting in his face, and he kind of got in mine, um, but how much that changed. And so
Yeah.
that moment where I wasn't a bully, wasn't, that kind of person. I was just more directive,
Yeah.
how much that changed him.
Yep.
And he's a great kid now. I mean, he's
Yeah.
doing awesome stuff, and love him to death.
And that
So you
might have
never
been the
know, people.
catalyst. That might have been the catalyst, right, for him.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So yeah, you never know, right? When life can be stressful, um, right? And there's a
yeah.
lot of stuff there's a lot of stressors out there in the world right now. Whether people are freaking about the eclipse that's coming up.
Yes,
People are
that's
freaking
coming.
out about people are
April
freaking out
8th.
about elections. People are freaking out economy. Right? There's a lot of things to stress
Yeah.
out about, but just keeping it real, keeping it grounded in your heart, keeping it doing what you can do, being kind when you can be kind. Right?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
being kind to yourself too. I think that's actually the one of the keys. Right? Is really being kind to yourself, and how you talk and
Yes.
think about yourself. Uh, some of the people I train sometimes are so you can hear that ego mind can be very mean. Right?
Hmm.
You suck. You're
Oh,
not good enough. You
horrible.
and it's just this mind chatter. And we'll talk later about how to deal with that. But
Yeah. Definitely
just
want to talk about that stuff.
yeah, just recognizing that that's not who you are. That's just this mind
Hmm.
chatter that can be ignored, um, and learning how to do that and to sort of separate and create a little bit of a
Hmm.
distance between the voice, the
Yeah.
thought, and the chatter that's going on.
And the techniques of how, like, with, the situation at Highland, when I was, get in the office. I was like, I took a moment right there, breathe,
Yep.
because I was angry. I was
Yep.
not a happy camper. The pool deck came to silence. I tend to have a loud voice, but it got louder, really loud. The deck was silent. I was like, okay, you need to calm down, Smithers. So I took something that I used for something totally different into that, not realizing it because I'd been doing it naturally.
Yep.
So it's like, oh wow, that worked for this too. Well, yeah, it works for everything. So we'll, I
Yep.
mean, that's what I want to talk about. Tools. When we talk about tools down the road, that's
Right.
something. Because
Right.
even when we're going through valleys, which we all go through, I want to eventually talk about when we're going through those valleys, how do we see ourselves out of it? I mean, we're
Mhm.
so deep into I call it the rabbit hole or the valley. Okay, that rabbit hole, you're like, how do I get out of this? Well, you just got to have the tools and have the ability just to slowly work your way through things and find those people that'll give you those positive talks and helps and pulls. So that's a lot of different stuff we'll talk about down the road, but
Right.
no, we're going there. So
So does that feel like that's kinda it for this one?
yeah, we got quite a bit in.
I feel
The
like that's good. I feel like that's good for this week. Hopefully, that was inspiring. Hopefully, there were some cool stories in there.
I mean,
Um,
well, it's all about it's that like with your mom, just being able to all those stories that we don't know what we're doing. So I think um people just need to know that we do touch lives. It's just so huge. I mean, someone's going to come up to your life 10 years later and go like, when you said that to me, that made a big difference in my life.
yep,
What? I said that?
yep,
Like, well, you didn't say it to me directly, but I heard you say it.
yep.
So next time, I'm not sure where we want to go down roads, but I'm trying to think. Well,
We'll maybe get into that whole, some of the signs of, it's time to shift how you're looking.
mhm,
Um,
yeah.
I think that
And then
that's
how
gonna.
to, and some of those things, like when you talk to me, when I was going, and I talk about this, and no, I always say this when I start talking about it. Um, I won't talk about the divorce, what happened in the marriage and the divorce, but I always talk about the process of going through the divorce. So,
For
because I
yourself,
don't want anything
your
to
own personal, yeah, your
myself, yeah,
personal,
because
yeah,
I'm not going to go into call it an argument or anything like that because we are what we
right,
are. And Chris and I are still, we're cordial.
yep,
We laugh and we giggle, which is awesome. And
yep,
I'd like people to know how I got there because at one point I didn't want to talk to her ever in my life.
yep,
It's like I was
hmm,
angry with her, but
yeah,
down that road we know how to get there because her and I are very
hmm,
cordial. We laugh. It's kind of fun. I'm like, I'm laughing with my ex-wife. How's that supposed to happen? Because I found that peace. It's kind of hard, but but yeah. So that's um, some of the where I'd like to get ourselves to. But you got to learn how to slowly work your way through. You told me how to meditate, how to breathe, how to think, and how to do
hmm,
that. And that's some of those things that as we slowly, like next week when we start talking about that journey, that's how you start these little
hmm,
things.
hmm,
When you see it, how do I get to the sometimes you see it at this level, like, okay, I can get out of that. Sometimes you're you're in the rabbit hole.
yep,
That whether you call it a rabbit hole, a deep valley in life, you either go through the valley of what, valley of death,
hmm,
of darkness, whatever it might be. You have to have a way out, find a
yep,
way,
yep.
you know.
So I guess that this episode hopefully had some of the stories were inspiring in terms of uh, you know, really emphasizing that, yeah, you do make a difference. Each one of us makes a difference. We may not see that, we may not know it, but your life matters, and who you are matters, and how
Hmm.
you are matters, right? And you can make differences in people's lives, and we all do. So just knowing that hopefully can be reassuring and supportive for somebody, especially if they're going through some hard times. And then we'll start down, you
Yeah,
know, if you're still listening, we'll
yeah,
start, sharing some things about, some of these tools and some techniques and stuff like that for how
and
you can transition and find.
yeah. If you need to, each day go, how did I make a difference?
Mm,
How did I make a difference? You know,
yeah.
um, and I'll tell you, ask any swimmer out there, and they'll tell you the difference of 1 degree. Okay, that's what it's called, the difference of 1 degree. That's a whole poem there because 1 degree
Hmm,
goes from hot water to boiling, and so that
hmm,
was always my mantra, the
hmm,
difference of 1 degree. And so you could just ask yourself if you're going through that time, going like, do I make a difference? Like, did I make a difference today? Oh yeah, when Billy just didn't get this, instead of saying something negative, I just said, hey Billy, just do this instead of this.
hmm.
You know, um, you just never know. So,
Yep.
but know that you do make a difference.
Yes.
You do. So,
Your life matters.
mhm,
Everybody's lives matter, and we all make a difference.
yep.
Um, So we'll leave
We
it at
appreciate.
that.
Well, I love everybody listening.
Yeah.
Hope you're enjoying it, and eventually we'll have live talk here sometime. So we'll get down that road. Just give us a few to figure
and
things
and
out and
and
kind
bring
of.
in some other people in to talk about their stories. So I've
Yes,
I've
we'd love
been
to.
having some people where I'm like, that person would be great to talk to, and that
Yep.
person would be great to talk to, getting people lined up. So we're definitely going to keep moving and growing and
Hmm.
sharing. So hopefully you're going to stick with us on the ride.
Yep. Enjoy the journey because we're having a good time. Hope you guys enjoy the journey and as we look to find that peace and happiness. So
Yep. Love you guys. Take care.
yep. Have a great week.
Take care.